Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the joint Finance and Student Support Services Subcommittee, chaired by myself and the chair of the Student Support Services, Jackie Doherty, with committee members Dakota and Gendron with us as well. So I'd just like to start the meeting off by letting the members of the public know that we will receive a presentation from the administration on 3 agenda items. Then we'll open it up for discussion with the subcommittee members and the committee members present. Then we will open it up to discussion from the public. And the school committee has a 3-minute rule on comments from the public, so we'll try to keep to that rule. But to start the meeting, we'll like to turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the school committee. Just want to get back a little bit before the school committee before you had passed a motion asking us to look at rezoning along having neighborhood schools. And so what we're really looking at is a spectrum of options. On one end is the status quo. We're in now with 2 zones. On the other end is complete family neighborhood schools. And in that choice, obviously, would require vacating the order that we're working with. Sorry about my voice, I'm recovering from a cold. What we have today, which is presented to us by Mr. Dakota, our transportation director, is a solution somewhere in between that looks at the possibility of examining the possibility of looking at something close to neighborhood schools, yet remaining compliant with the order that we're working with. I want to stress to everyone, I know everybody's been calling it a plan. It's not a plan, it's an idea. It's an idea that still needs quite some development. The reason I say it's not a plan, for instance, there was no educational look at this at all. What's the educational value? What do we need to do that we have to change from the educational point of view? It's a good idea. We need to, and we thought before we go further with any work, and on this one, to have a look at it, have the community look at it, and if this is where the community wants us to look and investigate, we're happy to look at doing this, doing more work to looking at the numbers behind it and so forth. One last thing that I want to say is that I've done this before in another district, rezoning or looking back at your entire transportation fleet and try to change it is not a simple task. It's not a task of a one person in an office. It's a task that requires professional looking into it. The last time we did this, we had to seek help from transportation specialists, and I would advise everyone here to keep that advice with them, that if we decide to go forward, which I do recommend, we look at our transportation are we even doing a good job the way we're doing it now, is that we look very seriously at bringing in specialists to help us out with this, and hopefully they will give us some strong recommendations at what we want to do. On that note,
Thank you,
give it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Before we turn it over to Mr. Dakota, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Chairperson Gignac?
Here.
Mr. Gendron?
Here.
Chairperson Doherty?
Here.
Mr. Dakota?
Here.
4 present.
Thank you very much. And tonight we will be reviewing 3 agenda items that Mr. Dakota will be presenting. Number 1, K through 12 student population by zip code. Number 2, transportation cost estimates of busing students to a high school at Colley Stadium. And number 3, rezoning the school district. Mr. Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. In regards to Ms. Doherty's motion on the K-12 student population by zip code, I would entertain any questions that the subcommittee may have concerning the data that was given to you. I would make one comment myself. If we look in the bottom left corner of the totals by the zip code, we all know for years we've been talking about the bubble that is coming through, which is now in our 5th grade, which goes all the way to the 2nd grade. We projected we would see a small decrease in population in grade 1, but it's something to look at in grade K, where our numbers did go up a little bit. I think that we will be looking at consistent numbers of the 1,200 as we come into the next kindergarten as well. So just something to note.
Chairperson Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Dakota. I just wanted to ask if when, when you're looking at the breakdown by zip code, have you done subtotals of what those numbers are by neighborhood? Do you have that information available? I didn't see
I
it.
did it by the zip code. So 01851 would be Centerville, and I did all of Centerville that way.
Okay.
I didn't break it down if it was the lower third of Bridge Street or the
Right.
Christian Hill. I didn't break it down from
So
street.
if we look at, as you said, 0150 is Centerville, if we look at those, just the zip codes, we can know how many students are coming from those parts of
That's
the city.
great. Well, 50 is Centerville, 51 are the Highlands, 52 is the Acre in Belvedere, and 54 is the Upper Acre in all of Pawtuckaville.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the zip code report?
The second motion by Ms. Doherty was to provide the committee with a report of the transportation cost estimates of busing students to a high school at Collie over the next 12 years, based on the number of students by neighborhood currently attending our schools. Examining the data that we gathered from the City of Lowell Parking Department, the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, and the Lowell Public School student population numbers, we are confident that in our number that we will be looking at approximately transporting 2,000 or 2/3 of Lowell High School to Collie Stadium. This would necessitate a additional 46 buses and/or $3.2 million in additional buses to our regular ed budget. Factoring in incremental step increases during that time, a little difficult to go from maybe 8 years on, Mr. Doherty, but we're probably looking at getting to the point of close to $4 million at that point by the end of the 12 years, if that, in fact, we go with the 46 additional buses there. There's also been quite a bit of talk concerning the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, what they can and what they can't do for us. So I did want to clarify with the subcommittee is that under federal law, regional transit authorities are forbidden to infringe upon the business of the school bus industry. So basically saying they can't build their routes just for students. They're a public transit system. We've been fortunate enough that the Regional Transit Authority has been able to service a lot because of where the downtown Lowell High School is now, being centrally located, where when they do those routes, those public transit routes, they can then branch off and then go back to their regular routes. There will be a significant problem with the LRT assisting us because of where Collie Stadium is. Right now, there's only one route going out to Belvedere. It would not be pragmatic for the LRTA to just reconstruct all their routes at this time. Their ridership is healthy right now. They have a very good public transit system. Does that mean in 4 or 5 years they're not going to be able to help us? The door is open. We are having discussions. We've met quite a few times with the administration of the LRTA. It will depend on what their ridership looks like in 4 or 5 years, and we'll be able to talk then. I think there'll be, from a dismissal point of view and concerning extracurricular activities, I think the LRTA will be able to help us in that aspect, the 3:30 or 4:30 or 5 o'clock with some students that may be staying for, extra tutoring, homework, or extracurricular activities. I think LRTA may be able to help us out in that aspect. But right now, they're basically non-committal at this point. If there's any questions concerning.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question. When you talk about the 46 buses, would that be one tier on those buses? Are you thinking that 2 runs of the 46 buses?
One run.
One run. And so I know with the cost, you said it would be difficult to really project out, but you're thinking about, say, $500,000 every 10 years? Is that what, because it kind of works out to be that, right?
Did that answer your question? Or?
Because obviously the cost will continue. I mean, you tried to go out 12 years.
It's very difficult to
Project
guesstimate because, like this is, as Mr. Frisch will tell you, we just are receiving bids in for our new contract, and which have seen some increases, and that's because of Obamacare. Are we going to be looking at other cost, variable cost down the line, I've kind of projected that we'd be looking at more of a CPI of an increase in each year, that we would be projecting that number.
Okay,
All right?
all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, John, just so I understand, the $3.2 million, so you're saying that busing to Colley Stadium would require 46 additional buses, or 46 buses, including...
Additional.
46 more buses than we have now?
Correct.
And $3.2 million is the annual cost?
Status quo.
And
as
this
of today.
$500,000 you're talking about
Those are incremental step
based
increases.
on,
Mr.
you know,
Jones? Yep.
prices increasing over
Exactly.
time? Right.
EPA mandates, increasing cost of buses, all
Got it.
value into that price.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
How many buses do we currently have?
Excluding our special ed fleet, we have 62 regular ed buses right now,
And how many students do they transport?
6,000.
6,000? So why do you think that we would need 46 buses for 2,000 kids? Is this based on the existing zoning and the existing structure?
Right, exactly.
Is this also based on the existing start time of the high school?
No. Oh, if you wanted to do it, yes, it'd be the 7:40, yes, absolutely, yep. 7:40 arrival time, 2:30 dismissal.
Okay, but there's a possibility of changing the start time of the high school that could relieve some of this.
I will be getting to that in the next agenda item. I think I'll
Okay.
answer your question.
Okay, all right, good.
Do you mind if I stand for the next? Oh.
Business?
All right, thank you. All right, this will be a little bit easier for me. I thought it'd be beneficial for the audience, the TV audience, as well as the subcommittee, to maybe tell everyone what we presently have for transportation and what we have for zones at the present time. So let's do that. Right now, the Lowell Public Schools has two distinct zones, the west zone and the east zone. West zone, just for perspective here, I'll get on this side. Just for some perspective, I get right in front of Steve, I'm sorry. This encompasses all of Pawtuckaville, the Acre, and the Highlands. That is Zone 1. Zone 2 is the Centerville section of the city, Lower and Upper Belvedere, Back Central, South Lowell, okay? Scattered in those two zones are 6 citywide schools, okay? They are the Bartlett School in the Acre, the Robinson School in Centerville, the Moody School in Belvedere, the STEM Academy at the Rogers, the Pine Arts Magnet, and the Lincoln School. In the transportation world, citywide schools is a 4-letter word. It's not good. Drains out transportation budget, okay? What I mean by that is, let's say little Johnny, who I hear is a very nice little boy, lives on Constance Drive in Pawtuckaville. Constance Drive is the last street in Pawtuckaville before you get into Tingsboro. When he came in, the Family Resource Center assigned him to the Pine Arts Magnet School. So at 8:25 in the morning, the bus picks up little Johnny, picks up a few other kids, and decides to take the scenic route all the way to the Pine Arts Magnet, all the way through, right to the school at 9:10. He's on the bus for 45 minutes. And I'm sure if I asked people in the audience right now, how many people have seen buses with 7, 8 kids on it? Why did they do that? This particular route has 7 kids on it this year. Why? Transportation isn't built on capacity. Transportation is built on time. I do not have enough time to pick up more students where it already takes me 45 minutes, okay? Citywide schools don't give us the time to efficiently use our buses. Right now, our buses are using a 3-tier system. Basically, a 7:20 schools, 8 o'clock, 8:30 schools, and a 9:10 school. Conversely, in the afternoon, a 2:10, a 2:50, and a 3:30. We pay for a bus per day. We utilize it as efficiently as we possibly can. The Mass General laws state that if you have citywide schools, you also have to offer citywide transportation to parochial schools and charter schools, okay? So let's take for an example, we try to piggyback some of our routes, like the daily school. We also try to pick up St. Margaret's students in the morning. So that's what we'll do in the morning. We'll pick up as many St. Margaret's students as we possibly can in Zone 1, where the daily school students are. Unfortunately, since St. Margaret's has citywide privileges, I have to send buses on this, and I pick up 5 students. And that's all, and I have to dismiss 5 students in the afternoon. So you can see where the drain, or the financial drain is. It's the time. We're devoting too much time to the other citywide components. So that's a distinct problem, to say the least. Is there any questions from the subcommittee on that or anything? Okay. So $3.2 million is a lot of money. How do we take care of that cost, in essence? We have to look at rezoning. We have to look at school bell times. And still, in speaking to the majority of the school committee in recent time, I had the sense that we wanted to keep the desegregation policy intact. So that is what I'm going to bring forward to you tonight. We are proposing a 5-zone system, okay? Once again, just for perspective here. Zone 1 is Centerville. Zone 2, Pawtuckaville, Acre, and a little bit of the lower Highlands. Zone 3, the Highlands. Zone 4, Back Central, South Lowell. And Zone 5, Lower Belvedere, Upper Belvedere. These 5 zones are compliant with the DSEG policy. Now, when we talk about the consent decree, what does that actually mean? Each zone has to be plus or minus 10% of the zone of the minority, non-minority percentage. Presently, in the school system, it's the goatee. Good life. And absolutely lost my train of thought, so. The desegregation, okay, great. So presently, but we're back in, I'll go back a little bit, not to bore you, but in 1987, the consent decree was signed, and back then, we had 72% of our population was non-Hispanic white, 28% was minority. 30 years later, switch it around, 28% non-minority, non-Hispanic white, 78% minority, okay? We have to stay plus or minus that 28% in each of those zones. We've done that. It is there, okay? So the other piece of the puzzle here is drastic school bell times. All but 3 school bell times will change in the city. Huge disruption to families. The good thing about it, you have 4 years, 5 years to work it out, which is great. But we are changing school bell times. Now, getting back to Ms. Doherty's question earlier was, what are we going to do with the times? Lowell High is at 7:40 right now. They get out at 2:30 in the afternoon. We are proposing a 7:50 arrival with a 2:05 dismissal. This gives us 46 buses to do a full tier. And just, people are asking, well, you have 62 buses, right? Okay. Well, unfortunately, as I just mentioned, charter schools are exempt from the citywide privilege, Mass General Law. They get citywide privileges, no matter what. There is a bill in the State House that was brought forth in January, and that will be voted on. But right now, both of our charter schools have citywide privileges. So if we devote 46 to the Lowell High School at 7:15, 10 buses to the Jackson Charter School at 7:30, that's 56 buses. Does give us a little leeway. If everything turns out just the way we planned it, we have $500,000 in savings. Not going to say that out loud. But what we can do is, if we're looking at the proposed changes, Mrs. Durkin, school bell changes, every middle school will go in at 8 o'clock and dismiss at 2:50 in each of the zones. It's really nice that you can come home and bring a little bit more fabric into the community. You're going to be playing with kids, and when they're getting out of school at 2:50, your neighborhood's getting out at 2:50, all the kids are there, which is great. I do want to emphasize that if this proposal does go through, this is not only for Colley Stadium. We can transport students to downtown as well. So be that as may, it probably end up being 1,200, 1,300 Lowell High students that would be eligible. We would be able to transport them as well. So I wanted to make sure we had there was equity there as well. Each of the zones will also have a K-8 configuration. We try to keep as much equity as we possibly can in each of the zones. We will have 3 elementary schools right now that are K-4. They'll be transformed into K-8. They will be the McAuliffe, the McAvenue, and the Morey schools. And speaking with operations manager Rick Underwood, that can physically be done. There will be some minor renovations that have to do with some bathrooms, but nothing major. It can be done, okay? So we are looking at huge changes in our school bell times, but by doing this plan, this DSEG plan, changing the school bell times, we will incur no additional transportation costs. The 3.2 is wiped away, okay? Guess I'll yield some questions if you like.
Questions? Mr. Gendron?
If I can make this mic work.
Nope,
No.
you're good.
We're going to have to share, John. Thanks for that, John. So I had a couple questions. So it looks like to me like the savings that we're incurring in this idea would be because we have greater efficiency on our buses, right? We don't have those buses with 5 or 6 kids on them anymore.
Right. Once you've taken away the city-wide school,
Right,
it just brings everything to its own perspective.
right. Also, we wouldn't have to bus the kids that go to parochial schools.
What we would do with the parochial schools is the same thing we would do with the public schools. Let's say, for example, in Belvedere, students would get a ride to the Immaculate Conception.
Right,
In Centerville, St. Mike, St. Louis.
right.
In Pawtuckaville Acres, St. Patrick's. In St. Jean d'Arc. In the Highlands.
Right.
Be St.
So
Margaret's.
we wouldn't have to be bringing the parochial school kids all the way across the city to go
That's
to their
correct.
school anymore.
That's correct. What's nice too is, if you can see here, and I'm sure for the people that live in Centerville and you want to get to the bridge, over the Bridge Street Bridge at 7:15, you might as well buy 3 coffees because that's how long it takes to get over the bridge. Well, in this scenario, the only bridges we have are the ones going from the Acre to Pawtuckaville. Once all those buses leave Lowell High at Colley, they go to the different sectors, and they will stay in those sectors and do their 8:30 schools and 9:10 schools. School bus routes will be no more than 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
Our average route time right now is 36 minutes.
Much more efficient from a
Right.
transportation perspective. So, in looking at this, how much money do we spend now on busing? Do you know offhand what our,
Yeah, it's, Gary, 3.8 for regular. The total is 7.8 total regular and
7.8
sped.
million a year?
Yeah.
So if we were, let's take the high school out of the equation for a minute.
Sure.
Let's just say we did this plan. Let's say we weren't getting a new high school, God
No.
forbid.
No,
If we were to just do this plan as is,
can't do it.
let me
Capacity.
let me finish my question. If we were to just do this plan as is in the current situation, I assume we'd be able to save money there as well. No? You're saying no?
You couldn't do it because of the capacity in the schools. Right now, Centerville itself is just trying to make physical space right now is at a premium.
Yeah.
So right now, we're very, very tight with the scenario with Centerville.
Okay.
Where actually, it may come to the decision of this board in 4 or 5 years, if this does happen, that we may have to use the freshman academy as an overflow right now. So to do
So,
that, you couldn't
okay.
do it as a
So you're saying we can't do it now because we don't have access to the freshman academy?
Pretty much, yeah.
So if we had access to the freshman academy and we could implement this plan, let's just say hypothetically, that would save us a lot of money over the current busing situation.
With
Am I
Lowell
right?
High not in play, is that what you're saying?
Well,
Yes.
let's leave the high school out of the picture for a minute. Let's just assume freshman academy is available to us,
Yep.
and we can implement your idea.
You can definitely
Um,
put some more school bell times in, and we could look at some,
But do you have an estimate of how much money we could save over the current spend if we could implement this plan as is?
I wouldn't venture to
Yeah.
give you an answer.
But
on that.
clearly, we'd be able to have
There's clearly.
all of those same efficiencies,
Correct.
more bus efficiency, fewer buses,
There's no doubt.
no parochial schools.
Yep.
We would be able to significantly reduce our current spend on transportation if we were implemented a neighborhood school plan now.
The problem with that is you're changing, you're not changing the tiers, is what I'm saying. There's no extra time to do all those other tiers. You're saying to take the high school out of the picture, but
I'm just saying that I think it's wrong to suggest that we would have no cost for busing to the high school because of this plan, because I think that we could implement a plan like this now, even if we weren't getting a new high school, and have cost savings associated with transportation.
I agree. I just can't
Yes,
give you a number.
significant cost savings.
I would imagine so, yes.
Significant.
I'm not going to give you a cost.
So I think it's really not correct to say that there would be no cost. You told me earlier today there was $3.2 million to bus people to College Stadium if we were going to do it as is right now.
As is, right?
Right. So that's kind of one extreme.
Exactly. You got it, yeah.
I don't think the other extreme is zero, though,
No,
because we're not comparing apples to apples.
I agree.
I think your idea is a good one, by the way. I think it's a good one, and I think that if we can maintain neighborhood schools and maintain our, the DSEG mix,
Yep.
and save money on transportation, I mean, why the heck wouldn't we do that? I really think that it is something that we should pursue as a committee.
Right.
But I kind of don't want to mix it up with the whole high school issue, because that's going to cloud things.
Understood.
This is a really good idea, and I'd like to, personally, I think we should move forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to kind of piggyback on what my colleague said. I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, Mr. Dakota, I'm sure you remember even more clearly, when we first came up with the current zoning that we have.
10 years
And we
ago.
were able to see significant savings by doing that. And my understanding in past school committees' requests or looking at the issue of the neighborhood schools and the desegregation order and the rezoning, it was really always about efficiencies and cost savings, because we're not in the transportation business. With all due respect to you, you're doing a great job with that. We are in the education business, and if we can save on transportation, that's money for education, for our staff, for the resources we need. So I'd like to, as I said, reiterate Mr. Genrin's point that we need to really look at this rezoning in and of itself, what makes the most sense for the city, especially with the amount of disruption that it would cause. And I would concur that maintaining desegregation in our schools is very important. I also think that choice for our families, and looking at this plan, and I recognize it's way more complex than I could even understand, at a first pass, that some of our neighborhoods do not have as many choices. Some of the zones do not have as many options as other zones, or as they have right now. But I think that, and as the superintendent said, this is just a beginning cut in what, really needs to be further vetted out. I think as we continue to look at the issue, I would want that to be the, kind of the values that are driving those decisions, which I commend. You've done that. You've tried to keep it desegregated. This does do that. But maybe be just looking primarily at what does it do to the K-8 transportation?
Right.
Because that really is what our focus should be. We don't know. I mean, I'm very hopeful that we are going to get a new high school, but
Sure.
at this point, I think we need to move forward with really the core of our transportation responsibility, which is getting those pre-K to 8th grade kids to where they need to be. And I see my colleague, Ms. Martin, would like to comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I do think this is really intriguing, and I am particularly pleased that the DSEG consent decree is at the front of mind. I appreciate that very much. And I agree that any savings we can find in transportation allows us to put that money directly towards our core mission. So any savings in this area is a huge benefit. As we're having these ongoing conversations, because I also agree with the superintendent and with Mr. Dakota that this is a very this will have a profound impact on our district. So the things that I want to make sure we're considering, certainly the concept of choice. A lot of our parents and our families are choosing schools that are not the closest for specific reasons, whether it's because of after-school care, whether it's babysitters or other programs. In another case, what I'm concerned about is that we've gone to great lengths to create some really unique educational opportunities for students in these citywide schools. Certainly the Pine, looking at the Rogers STEM, which is one of the newer ones, and the idea of giving that up. I'd include the Bartlett in that list too, with its university connections. There is something I think that as a committee, as a district, we've been really proud of being able to create these unique opportunities, educational opportunities for students where it worked. So that's going to be a big thing to let go of if as we move forward, and I think would certainly warrant some additional conversation. And I think the idea of kind of making this shift, again, this is something we should be considering as a whole for our K-8 population, and just making that decision. And I think it looks like a lot of significant benefits, so I'm certainly looking forward to having the conversations. But there's just a number of things that we need to consider, and I think pushing it, I don't want to push it, I don't want to say we want to do this right away, but I do think we can do this prior to any opening of a high school. This is something that might be to our benefit to maybe put something like this in place in a year or two, and let it settle before, the actual building process and whatnot. But I recognize how challenging this work is, and I'm very appreciative of that. I'm sure you had other people helping you. So I really do appreciate you taking the time and the effort, overall from the administration to give us this option. It's, kind of a perfect world solution, which, other than these other small details we're going to need to look at, never would have thought we could get here and still be able to maintain that DSEG order, and that, as you all know, is my biggest concern.
Thank
so
you.
I really appreciate the work you've done on this, even just to this point.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dakota.
This Mr. Dakota.
I'm not going to say it.
No, I'm good. I think I agree with all my colleagues in terms of what kind of cost savings this could produce for us and the benefits that we could reap from that. But I think most of the parents that are here tonight and parents that are listening into this are probably most concerned with the school time changes. I think that's going to be the biggest fly in the ointment, as it were, to getting this off the ground. And again, something like that is going to take a while. It can't happen overnight. So I think we have to do some serious, careful studying of that aspect of this, because everything else, all the rest of it is awesome. And thank you very much, Mr. Dakota.
Thank you, Uncle.
Okay. Can I? All right. Thank you, Mr. Cotto. I think this is a good starting point for the discussion. I think, this was actually brought forward prior to the discussions on the high school location. Council O'Leary had requested rezoning, and as did I a few months ago. So I'm glad to see that we're able to do such. And Councilor Elliott, I'm glad to see that we're able to put something together that is moving in the right direction. I have a lot of questions that I think we can dig into later on, as you do more research and you get some input from the curriculum and student
Exactly.
support offices, such as, you know, is this a phased process? Will kids be displaced? Will they be removed from schools? How would we communicate that to families? Loads of questions that I think we need to spend some real time digging into. But I think this is a step in the right direction. Mr. Hoey, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a few comments. One, I think this plan brings us closer to neighborhood schools, after what I got out of it anyways. And I feel we should even get closer to neighborhood schools. And the way we're gonna do that, I believe, is we have to get the city involved. I mean, 2 school committees, even going back 20 years ago, we had people screaming George Cooler Harris every week about neighborhood schools. I think we can go back to them 100%. I really do think it's time to do that. I think if we go back 100%, I think we'll have enough money left over to buy our own buses to bring people to Colley Stadium. Now, with that said, I've been here a little over a year. You took my water. Okay. And what I see, you're wearing 2 hats. They give you 2 jobs, and you've been doing it for the city for quite a while. And I want to thank you for that also. But as far as busing goes and transportation, I think it's above all of our heads here, to be honest with you. I think the city needs to have the city solicitor go find out once and for all the law about neighborhood schools. And after that's done, what we need to do is maybe have the city, I think they got about $600,000 or $700,000 of money that we think we're gonna get back. Let them keep 50 grand and find some pros that know how to do transportation. Not to say you're not good. You've done better than anybody else can do in Lowell, but I actually think you need help. And I think the city should do most of the work to get us going. And that's the city solicitor doing that. And then we should spend some money to have the city do a transportation plan that pros are doing. I think, not to knock your work, I think you've done, this is marvelous. I wish these other speakers were up first before I have to speak, but I think we have to work toward full neighborhood schools, and it has to happen now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. And just moving forward at future meetings, we should really focus on K through 12 for transportation. Providing transportation regardless of location, I think, is a goal of many members of this committee. So if you could provide that as well moving forward. At this time, if there's no further discussion by the committee, I'd like to open it up to members of the public.
If I could,
Yes.
James, I'd just like to acknowledge my clerical staff. They did a yeoman job, and I just want to acknowledge their efforts.
Great, thank you. If you could just sign in your name.
Yeah, I think you have 3 people on here.
Oh, we're going to be here a while,
You
thanks.
need the list?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Willett. I reside at 61 Knob Way. That's in Belvedere. Thank you, Mr. Gignac and Ms. Doherty, our chairs, for bringing us here tonight, and all the other members of the committee to allow the public to speak on such an important topic. Okay, not only myself, but everybody else in the room. I also want to thank Dr. Kalfawi, Ms. Durkin, and Mr. Frisch for being here and helping organize the meeting. It's very important. Tonight, the focus of my comments is to endorse any plan, really, that would provide a bus ride to and from school for the students at Lowell High School, okay, regardless of what site is selected, okay? I know that there is passion for both sides, but I'll stay out of that for now. But I do believe that the busing for the high school kids is something that we can all rally behind. As a taxpayer, if need be, I am prepared to help pay my share of the cost, for certain. As an educator, I am here really just to encourage everyone to make this decision that could be a very, very positive impact, and that if we prioritize it, I think that the impact and the great things that could come of it, I really don't even think we could imagine it right now. In preparing my remarks tonight, I reflected upon another long-time school policy that has recently changed, and that's the 2-hour snow delay. It was long stated for a very long time, with a lot of different reasons, that Lowell, we could never do our delay. It would not work for a community. Well, tonight, I really like to start by complimenting Dr. Kalfawi for his forward thinking, his leadership in implementing this change. Okay? This, to me, is a great example of an outdated policy, an old school way of thinking that wouldn't work for our city, that we changed, and I think that we could even just use that as an example or a model for a new plan for the busing for the high school students. A quick story, if I will, about a kid on our team at Lowell High School, the track program. Bringing this topic up, you know, it was discussed. This child lives at Westminster Village out in Pawtuckaville, about as far away as you can get. And he went to the Stocklosa school, and he always got a bus. And when this topic was brought up, he asked me, he said, "Coach, why do I not get a bus to Lowell High, but I got a bus to the Stocklosa?" And it was almost sad for me to answer him that it was money. It was almost me telling him, "You're a poor kid, and you know, you can't afford a bus pass, and the school system or whatever, you know what I mean? Not to put anybody under the bus here, but you know what I mean, okay?" It was, you know, sort of sad for me to have to answer him that way, you know? Now, I know there are plenty of days that he has to hoof it in, you know, and we have our little internal system in our team, you know, and we've got bikes donated, and we've got bus passes, and try as I might, it's not perfect, but, you know, we get him in most days or whatever. But I will say that his record, attendance and tardies at the Stocklosa versus at Lowell High School, there is a difference there, okay? And I know Westminster Village is one example. There are plenty others of long walks in, you know. How would you like to be a kid living out past the Butler School on Gorham Street on the Lowell-Chelmsford line, you know, or behind the Market Basket on Wood Street, you know? Those were others, okay? Those were the extreme examples, but I do think, you know, that there are others that are even shorter, but, you know, we can help those kids as well. And as I'm wrapping up here, Mr. Gignac, I know I'm another gun. Providing a student with a ride to school could really be the most fundamental thing that we could offer for a student, okay? The challenges that they face each day, this should not be one of them. Getting a ride to school should not be a part of their daily stress. To me, a ride to school should be right there with playing a sport or joining a club, receiving books for your courses, having a clean, safe place to learn every day. Okay, right now, every student at Lowell High School receives a free breakfast and a free lunch. I think a free ride to school would really bring everything together, and that would be the complete package, and what a great thing we could have for the kids. Okay, I know that Mr. Cotto, the best in the business, what he did here tonight was amazing. Okay, he's developed a few plans, and there's a lot more analysis that needs to go into this, but I really think that we can embrace this challenge. Okay, personally, everybody in this room can take a lot of pride, I think, if we could provide this for the kids. Okay, these kids could get home at a consistent time, help mom and dad pick up the slack at home with any chores and things like that. Okay, as I close, I would also like this committee, Mr. Dakota, and the athletic director to explore the possibility of taking this step a little further. And I'm talking about afternoon late buses for kids. Okay, home from activities and things like that. I will even step up and volunteer to be the first person on some little subgroup or whatever. That's a sincere offer. I would be more than happy to offer my services to help with that. Okay, and you can reach me at the high school. Thank you, Mr. Gignac and Ms. Doherty. Thank you, everyone else.
Thank you. I'm Jonathan Richmond, 46 Linden Street, Lowell. I'll preface what I'm about to say by letting you know that I have a PhD in transportation planning from MIT and a worldwide practice, and I specialize in bus transportation. I've advised the County of Los Angeles, the ministry in Singapore, which wants to improve its bus transportation. They already have excellent rail transportation. I was in Ethiopia recently. I won't go on. This is a rather small problem here in Lowell compared to what I'm used to dealing with.
Before I go any further, I have 2 points to make. One, look at this zoning map. I'm just going to very briefly say there really should be 2 high schools in Lowell, not 1, and not just for transportation, but all sorts of educational reasons as well. I'm not going to get distracted by that, but I think this should be taken back to the state, and we need to have both sides developed. On to the transportation issue. And first, I'd like to cite what a young lady said at the meeting on Corley at the CMAA. I happened to be sitting at the same table as the kids from the Boys and Girls Club, and they were magnificent, and I tried to get their views. And this young lady, who I asked to stand up, and she did make the point, because I make it my business to give a voice to people who should be speaking, she said she was worried that her family isn't going to be able to afford the bus. Right now, a lot of kids walk to Lowell High School. And some of them walk quite long distances. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's because of poverty, and they've been walking long distances in this bad weather. I think the point she made that if she and others, well, she will have graduated by then, are got to go to Corley, it should be free. And I think a basic point is that a bus system should be provided that is free of charge to all kids. This is causing a lot of anxiety that should be dealt with. The second point I want to address is the type of bus transportation service that needs to be provided. It really needs to reflect needs. We need to, I can understand how at first we're talking about let's count the number of buses we need. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Lowell is a complex place. For example, a lot of kids go to after-school activities in the downtown area that are extremely important for all sorts of social and educational reasons. A lot of kids come from low-income families. There are often, unfortunately, family disruptions, so they're going to be late for school. There are going to be a lot of issues where the family also doesn't have the transportation to take them to school. So we need a much more sophisticated approach than just talking about a fixed fleet of buses that is going to get them there on one journey in the morning. We do need to have that basic bus transportation that will operate in the morning to take the bulk of kids to school and to bring them home. So that is number one. That is a starting point. That is clearly something that we need. But we also need to supplement that with a number of layers of service. One obvious thing is because of the distance of Corley from so many parts of the city, if kids are late for any reason, they're going to have a lot of trouble making it to school. So we actually have to schedule some sort of late transportation to pick up kids who, for whatever reason, miss their basic bus. At the end of the day, we need to have transportation that goes directly to after-school activities and possibly also take them home from the after-school activities when they're finished. These are of very great social importance. It's very important that that be provided for. We also need transportation during the day and in the evening if kids have to stay late for any reason, if they have to come back for evening events. A lot of the families around here don't have the means to provide the transportation. So we need to do that. One of the things I look at in my professional field is use of small buses, and what I would say is we need a possibly two-tier system with the regular big buses and also an at-call system that's available to provide these other needs with possibly smaller buses with a dispatch person, preferably, I think, with a private company rather than giving that to the schools, so that if there's a need, parents can call in and a van can be dispatched out. This can be put out to tender, and it need not be that expensive, so that we have these all-day needs. And by the way, this bus system may also be appropriate for certain adult transportation, because I've heard talk about needing 800 parking spaces at the Corley School. This is not desirable to take up so much land. Already that site has huge amounts of area devoted to parking. We might want to talk about remote parking lots and bringing in teachers and others by transportation, and to some extent it could actually be shared by the students. So what I'm concluding is we need to have a much more sophisticated approach, and we need to look at the needs of the kids and their families and put that first. And I'd like to suggest that that's different in Lowell from many other places, and we need to bring in the community more, learn about their patterns of activities through the school day and afterwards, and then design a bus system. We need to also tender it, and I work in tender I've designed numerous tender processes. We need to have a good tender process so that the city gets the best value out of it. And that tender process needs to be informed by principles of good bus operation. So I wish you good luck, and I hope we have a much better system. And actually, I'd like to see much less kids having to walk to school. I've known kids who are walking through extremely bad weather. I know some of the downtown lobby have said, well, at this point, kids walk to school. I've talked to a few families. It's not necessarily a good thing. So let's improve things for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening to the committee members and the staff that's here tonight. My name is Paul Healy, 653 Wilder Street. I just want to touch on a couple things in the additional considerations draft plan. You know, it's stated here by Mr. Dakota that the changing of the bell times would be able to provide busing to the high school kids, no matter where it was. And like this gentleman just spoke, and I don't have a degree from MIT, not that bright, but if we can do this and provide these kids with transportation, no matter where they live or no matter where the high school is, we should provide it. That's just a fact. Now, I had a lot of other questions, but I think this gentleman did a great job. I don't necessarily agree that we should be transporting parents to events, but if we can do this without any impact on the budget that you people have today and moving forward with a 4-tier system, then we should do it. That's just a fact. I don't think any kid, I don't care where you live, whether it's downtown, whether it's Varnum Ave, whether it's the Hill in Centerville, if you want to go to Lowell High School and you can be bused and we can do it at no additional cost, we should be doing it. Now, the other thing I would like to say is if we're going to do this process, I think that Dr. Kafawi was very wise in saying that maybe it's time that we look to the city council to appropriate some funds that we can have an outside agency come in and do more analysis on this plan just to firm it up and make sure that we're going in the right direction with it. I'm not saying we have to implement it tomorrow, but I am saying we need to look at it and we need to put people in. Mr. Dakota, I think you did a tremendous job tonight, but I think if there's outside eyes looking at this, there may be some other avenues that haven't been gone down that we could save additional cost. And then we might be able to provide transportation to adults to get to their kids' events after school. I don't know if that's the case, but if we can do it and there's no additional cost, I don't care where they build the high school, we should do it, period. I'm pro-Collie, but if we can bus our kids and nobody has to be affected tax-wise, we should do it. The end. That's how I look at it, and I appreciate your time and for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yep.
Thank you. I just have a question for Mr. Dakota after I look at the presentation. My name is Dominic Lay from 363 Walker Street. When I look at this, I wonder if this is the only plan. I don't know how much, must be a lot of work that you've been doing on this, because we've seen this, over 15 months already on this drawing. And I'm wondering if we have a second or third options to look at to see the zoning. Would that be too much work? That's not first question. And the second question is, since we divide it into 5 smaller zones now, and the saving is $3-something million. Is that because of a less bus now, because most people live closer to school? So those are the only 2 questions I have. Thank you.
It's not a savings at 3.2. It would be $3.2 million if we had to add an additional 46 buses. I do remember your presence, I think, at one of the transportation subcommittees we had about a year ago. This is a different plan that was submitted. this is the only scenario that keeps the desegregation order intact. I can't give you another scenario if, in fact, you want to keep the consent decree intact.
No, just not for me. I just wonder if, yeah,
That's fine.
that's
Yep.
fine, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Any further comments from the committee or the administration? Yes, Deputy Durkin.
Thank you. I know that Mr. Dakota thanked his staff, but I'd like to publicly thank him. He did all the legwork, literally, going to the different agencies, also working with city officials, looking at the rezoning and potentials. So we know that this is a preliminary rendition for people to look at. We know that we need to vet this through our school leaders, through our families, and probably some other professionals. But I do want to state that we do have a very well-trained professional here in district who knows Lowell, who knows our neighborhoods, and I think that's a great value that we have here. So thank you, Mr. Dakota.
I just realized that you didn't answer my second question, which was the saving on the bus. When the zone is smaller now, do we have more walkers now and less school buses? Is that what the saving was?
With the zones being smaller, we will be actually able to transport more children, because in those zones, right now, presently, in our K-4 elementary, you need to live 3/4 of a mile from your home to school in order to get a ride. You have to be, for middle school, grades 5 to 8, 1.5 miles. With these zones, we would be able to drop the elementary mileage to 0.5 mile and drop the middle school mileage to 1 mile and 1 mile for the Lowell High as well. So we'll be able to transport a lot more children in a shorter amount of time.
So pretty much almost everybody still take a school bus. Just
We
take shorter-
transport 6,000
shorter-
out of close to 10,000 K-8.
More students.
60% of our
Okay.
students.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a great point, Mr. Dakota, to bring up that. I think that's something that we were curious about. Yeah, Mr. Gendron? Oh, Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank everybody for their comments tonight. I think they were very worthwhile. A couple of comments I wanted to make in response to that. First, with regard to the point about the 2 high schools. I serve on the school building committee, and that is a idea that came up early on in our discussions. And you know, if we had 1 high school on either side of the river, that certainly would, it might make transportation much easier, of course. However, almost unanimously, the school building committee felt as though it was important to keep a single Lowell high school. And it's for reasons of the unity that Lowell High School, a single Lowell High School, brings to the entire city is valuable, and it's unique, and it makes it a special place. And I really think that's true. So that's why the committee at the time decided to not go toward dividing the high school, even though, you know, there are some good reasons to do it. Everybody seemed to want to maintain a single high school. So I just want to make that comment. And the other thing I wanted to say is I wanted to thank Coach Olet for his story. I think that's, you know, that's something that we need to consider carefully. I do think that we need to, you know, I think it's okay for us to leverage the LRTA and to leverage the fact that those buses are running and they go downtown, and it can be a savings to the school department, and many kids can utilize that. But there are kids who can't, and we need to recognize that, and that's not right. So I think that maybe with a plan like this, as the other gentleman said, we can implement a plan like this and afford it within our current budget. But I also think it might be worthwhile looking into working with the LRTA where there's a need-based situation. If a kid can't afford a bus pass and he lives at Westminster Village and he needs to get to Lowell High School, maybe in the interim, in the short term, we can work something out with the LRTA, and maybe it is some cost to the district, but perhaps we can come up with a plan where, in a need-based situation, we can get those kids bus passes when they don't have bus transportation to the high school. So, I'd even like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, that we ask the superintendent to look into the idea of working with the LRTA to provide bus passes for Lowell High School students when there's a need-based situation.
Motion by Mr. Gendron, second by Ms. Dakota. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Dakota. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it was excellent news to hear that we would be able to be transporting that many more students and lowering the walk rate. I didn't realize it had gone up to, I don't remember it being that high, 3/4 of a mile for an elementary student and 1.5 miles for a middle school student. That's a long distance. I guess my question really is to look at what are our next steps. And I think we've been able to see right away that there are a lot of benefits to be had by looking at the whole zoning piece and transportation. And I'm wondering, I don't know if anyone from the administration, what are some drawbacks that you see that, with this plan or with any plan moving forward, given that we do want to keep the desegregation piece in? Mr. Frisch, did you?
Yes, one of the side issues or drawbacks is within the plan that, or the idea or the concept that John is talking about, is reconfiguring some elementary and middle schools to K-8 schools, I heard him say. K-8 schools happen to require more staff, which then a elementary K-4 or 5-8. So we would have to consider those kinds of issues when we look at a total rezoning plan. So it's just something else to consider and to review.
Mrs. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. I think, as we said earlier, this plan needs more study. And the people we need to work with is the city. Just want to remind everybody that the city is really in control of the transportation. In the state of Massachusetts, the transportation is paid by the city, so we have to work with the city to, number one, get them to approve that we should bring in professionals to help us. And number two, whatever proposal comes out of it, the city has to look at it and endorse it, because that's a cost that's going to go directly to the city, and it's not a cost that hits the school budget, as you know. And with respect to your question, what are drawbacks? They're not drawbacks, they're challenges. We just have to work through them. One of them is what my colleague, Mr. Frisch, mentioned, which is reconfiguring the schools to K-8. And we have to look at that so that a complete feasibility study is done to see what is the additional cost that is required there so that it can be compared to the savings. And I do agree with my colleagues and some of the publics who mentioned that my goal in looking at this is really to provide transportation for high school and providing transportation for after school as much as we can, because I know I have talked personally to some students in the high school, and I saw that the reason that we do not have a very high participation in some programs is because they don't have those rides to go back home at night in the middle of the winter. So if we can do anything to help provide that transportation, I don't care where the high school goes, we need to do this. We need to have a look at this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoey?
Thanks. I invited a few people to speak here tonight. I don't know if they had a sign up or not. Would you ask one more time, especially staff members, if they want to speak? I'm saying it to them right now. If anybody still wants to come to the mic, you're welcome. You didn't have to sign up. If not, thank you very much.
Yes, if anybody would like to speak, you can feel free. No, sorry.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Wendy Crocker-Roberge. I am the principal at the J.G. Pine Arts Magnet School. It's quite a privilege to be a principal in Lowell, and I have been talking with John for many years. I came from another district 6 years ago that had very little busing, and it's down the road, it's Lawrence, and they actually went through a very similar process with their high school in determining about 10 years ago whether their high school was going to stay in the center of the city or move to the outside of the city. And they spent a lot of time discussing a lot of the same things that you all are discussing here. And I would just encourage you, being, two mill cities not too far away from one another, that there are definitely some folks that you could probably reach out to really understand what the impact of their choice was and any drawbacks that it had, or any how happy they are with their move and their decision. That being said, John and I talked many years ago because I was shocked at the amount of busing that we have and the inefficiencies around it. Being the citywide magnet school, I am that bus that has 7 kids coming from Pawtucketville and is more than 3/4 empty in the morning. And I do understand what the cost implications of that are, and I would much prefer, and I'm sure all of my principal colleagues would agree, to see the money that we spend be invested in our schools, in our buildings, and not on, gas and transportation and, things that are probably harming our environment anyhow. So I would love to advocate to have a very close dialogue with the school committee on getting the principal voice to the table to talk about the implications, because this will affect families. This will affect students. I think a lot of the challenges that are around, starting times and ending times, as Dr. Kofawi mentioned, they're challenges, and they're things that we can work with our city partners like CTI and Boys and Girls Club and places like that to problem solve around. But the idea of, I will be a strong advocate always for the K-8, even though they are a teeny bit less efficient than the K-4s and 5-8s, because they are a wonderful option for families and for parents. And I know that Ms. Martin, you had expressed concerns about limiting students who were able to go to theme-based schools. And I would just advocate, and Dr. Kofawi and I have talked about this in other times, where when you're looking to rebuild a school or reconfigure a school, that's a great opportunity to bring a theme to a building. So it doesn't mean that because we reconfigure the district or we rezone, that we remove options for students. We should be looking at creating K-8s or creating schools that actually add options. There doesn't need to be one STEM-themed school in the whole district. There are many themes that anchor the work that school leaders do and the work that students do that are very powerful, including the arts and including STEM and project-based learning and lots of things like that. And I think these could be great opportunities to create more variety and more consistency. It would be so amazing for us at the Pine Arts Magnet School to have another magnet school across the city and to have teachers that could collaborate with one another. So I do encourage you to bring the voices of the principal to the table, and we can speak for families and staff with moving a plan like this forward. Lots and lots of possibilities do exist, though. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion from the subcommittee? Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the feasibility of this plan and vet out some of the challenges, working with our partners in the city, and take it to the next step and report back to us with some recommendations.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Ms. Doherty, second by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here tonight and participating. We appreciate that. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Dakota, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
caught when we've seen each other on the Facebook page. Yes.
Nice to meet you.
My husband Gary.
Hi, Gary. Nice to meet you, Gary.
Yes, a lot of moving targets here. And there's my daddy. How are you?
Good. I wanted to introduce you to Joanne.
Hi, I'm Joanne.
She was the one that
Hi.
asked about if she could copy some of your
email, your letter that you wrote and posted.
And you said copy away.
And you said I could, and I am.
Indeed.
Yes. And
Your first one.
Indeed.
which one was that? Which one was
On the
that?
Facebook page, we were talking
Oh, yeah, the one that's disappeared. I can't see it.
Yeah, I found it and gave it to her.
Yeah, yeah.
She couldn't find it either. I guess I'm good at something.
That's very strange. You know, it's like, oh, it's like odd. So, yeah.
That was great.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Hey, I know my limitations.
We all have our limitations, but what you were saying, I think, went well beyond that. That's why I was wondering, come on now.
That's so funny. I meant to ask you, what did you do? Did you have a profession? I mean, you write so well. I mean, what is that? Just something you learned, or just innate?
Oh, no, the conglomeration of experiences, various parts of my life. Parents, working in the public library, in the medical device industry, executive assistant.
She was mother in the device place. I mean, so much stuff went through her.